Awesome. Well, I know we're at our time, so we're going to go ahead and get started here. Welcome to another segment of the Scaling Multifamily Brands Live. We're going to go ahead and get started right now. I know some of you will come in as we go out through the program, but today we are talking about how to get even more clients and talking to them in a way that it makes that easier, right? So, executives, as we know, obviously have grown up in the business, have learned from background and experiences, and oftentimes they're predictable in the way that they make decisions, as probably you are, and probably I know after going through this research I'm putting forward today, I am also predictable. And that's good news for you because that's a great way to differentiate and really um, make some momentum where others might miss out. And when we understand the preferences that these decision makers have, and we understand, how they see information, how they like to hear information, right? It gives us that unique edge, right? It gives us that unique edge to not even if you had more leads and stuff, but you just started closing more of the things you already had, right? If that's more raising capital, more innovation sold into the marketplace, whatever that is, it's about really optimizing current results. So this is also not something that can happen just in sales. It could work obviously in the way that you market your offer, how you do your content, but communication, as we know it, is, and I know a lot of times we get into busy schedules and urgency and things like that, but communication is not what we say. It's, what is landing with the person we're talking to, or the business unit we're talking to, or the group, right? And oftentimes we're trying to push information out, and we forget that people process things differently. So it's how they see it, right? It's how they hear it, not necessarily what we say. And that there's a whole nother body of knowledge around the study of communication, right? And I'm not going to go into that today, but I am talking about credibility. And when we get that right, credibility is an outcome, right? So credibility is not something that we pursue. It will be an outcome of getting all the things that we're talking about today right. And we've been through 4 phases already. And, you heard me earlier in a segment, I can't remember which one, and it was about the feather, and it was like, pursuing something so hard and aggressively that the force of pursuing it actually can potentially push it away. And our job is to sort of catch the client, catch the opportunities, let them draw them into us. And that's similar to what we're doing here. By the time we get into this 4th stage, which we'll go over today, is this credibility becomes the outcome. It's not something we actually pursue, right? But when we get it right, we can improve our chances of success in many areas. I was just talking to our team before the topic here, and it's like, this matters to employees. It matters to decisions you make internally about priorities. It matters to personal relationships with children, and of course, customers and clients and city officials, all those things. Now, before we dive into this topic, I just want to welcome all of you here. I know that I see a lot of familiar faces. This is something I'm starting to really look forward to each week. So thank you for your continued contribution and support. I know that you have to invest. It's free. We're doing this free, but it's not free. You have to invest your time. You could be doing other things. So I do value that and appreciate that. And it's been a great opportunity to share those experiences with you. So thank you for all that. I will give you a couple updates on some events that we have. We have the Multifamily Investment Summit coming up. It's literally around the corner. This is our highest level investment summit of all the events we do. This is what most all of us do, is try and support those that are taking the risk and putting these deals together. It's for us, it's where multifamily investments, technology, and innovation converge, and it's putting people in the position to think forward, right? Think about what's next, what's going to impact those investment dollars, if that be market conditions, all the things that are happening around labor, around technology, around managing the apartment of the future. So that's going to position you for successful multifamily investing, and that's at multifamilyinvestmentsummit.com. Head on over there, check out the schedule. We announced some speakers. They're not published yet, but amazing group of people that you don't see in many other places, and they're spending some time with us to create some value. So really excited about that. Now, let's get started with executives and investors, as we talked about being predictable in how they make decisions. As we understand them, right, they've reached a level of success to be able to finance an apartment deal, invest in a technology, or they have a management company. They have achieved success, even if they're working within it. And so that success and that journey of their career and even their life, they've experienced certain things themselves, right? These might be the people that you're trying to enroll in your programs, right? You're selling into an industry, or you're trying to raise capital, but if you're raising capital and you're talking about your next apartment deal, or you want to buy, or you want them to buy, I guess, your product or service or experience, these people are probably really good at what they do. We talk about your prospective customer, right? They've gained experience long into this process. I talked about this before. I say in multifamily, in any industry, really, here's how it works. People get involved. They do great. They get promoted. They get to a position where they're leading others. And then what they do is they teach others what they've learned. And that's pretty much the predictability piece of the process. And the reality is that world that they've experienced and learned is, in many cases, changing fast, right? So, they are good decision makers. Otherwise, you wouldn't be talking to them to buy your stuff or to invest in your property or portfolio, whatever that may be. I'll tell you that this is good news, right? Because you want people to make good decisions, right? Because if they don't make good decisions, then they're probably not going to choose the thing that you're working on. But when we think about this, if all they're trying to do is make good decisions, then sales is really just helping them make another good decision, right? Maybe with some new information or a new project, new portfolio. And if you remember in last week's episode, I talked about revenue-based branding. And in that, everything that we do, it leads to some outcome, some result, some sale, right? Funding a portfolio, funding a property, enrolling in a new technology, integrating a new service. But everything that we're doing in that process is moving the sale forward. That's the goal. We're not trying to close and convince and convert, right? Because we've got a strategic process here, right? And if you move out of the mindset of selling and into the mindset of truly helping people, then all we're doing is helping them formulate a good decision about the things that they want to solve. Not the things that you have, but the things that they want to solve. Or we talked about this as well. It's either solve a problem or create a bigger and better opportunity. So it's content around the opportunities that they want to create, right? Go faster, find other ways to drive revenue, whatever that may be. So here's the thing. If the executives have gained their experience over their career, making decisions about a world that is very different, you're seeing it like in the last 2 years, very different. They're going to need help understanding what to do next. And typically, if you've got an innovative technology or product, it's probably not something that there's evidence of in many cases. You're trying to get someone to try something new. The new world ahead of us is just constant uncertainty. And I think we're all tested with, how do you stay in business in a pandemic? How do you operate? There's just so many changes that have forced us to a new, not going back to what it was, but literally just a new world of thinking, a new mindset of creating strength and diversity around companies that can sustain and make it through. You will tell stories, many years ahead, like, I managed through this, and therefore I'm a better investor, or I'm a better operator. There's just this always changing pressure to engage people in new ways, changes to workplace, how we reach customers, all that. And it's not just affecting you and I, it's affecting everyone. And outside multifamily and inside multifamily, including the multifamily investors. So if you're helping people move through what they need to know and do to achieve their goals, you're going to have more opportunities ahead. Clearly. Again, look, we're thinking about them. You've heard me say this before. Make it all about them, all about what they want, and all about how they get it. And we're making it for their reasons, not yours. I mean, we want to get the deal funded, the fund sold out. We want to get the project completed. We want to get our product into the marketplace. Those are our reasons. Why do they need it done? That's how we're going to be positioning here. Now, the greatest salespeople on the planet, they know how to do all of this, and they probably don't take credit for it. They just naturally do it, but because they're so good at it, and their job is to be top in the company at it, they don't necessarily go on and share it with others, right? So you have one salesperson doing this, and how are they winning every year the top sales? But what we need to do is we want to get people to do what they want, right? When I say they, I'm talking about our prospective client, what they want. And we want to do it for their reasons, not ours, right? So whenever you're enrolling somebody, you're trying to get them to do something that you want them to do, like buy our stuff, fund our deal, but for their reasons, not yours. And today I've got some content here that I did some research on that's unbelievable. I get, if you want to learn, just teach. And I'm just sharing, just going through the process of discovering this was really fascinating. And once you start doing that sharing and creating that value and helping people make those decisions, then all you're doing is you're making content that people can consume that is helpful, provides goodwill, moves the sale forward, and you become more of a trusted advisor. And all you're doing is you're helping people formulate a good decision. Now, you may remember last week I talked about the Apple Store experience. I just kind of ran on a quick story about that employee. And, by the time you reach the Apple Store, they don't need to be sold, convinced. And at this time, you're talking about walking through that door, that glass door. They already have the credibility and trust when you walk in. If you've ever experienced walking into the store, then you'll see what I'm talking about, because it's a feeling of, if your customers came in to your demo meetings or your client pitches, and it felt like how a customer comes into the Apple Store when they're ready, informed, to understand the product. They've heard from their friends about how great it is. They've seen all the ads, all the awareness stuff. But really, the employees in the Apple Store are really just helping them formulate a decision, which level of, how much data you want, all that stuff. And next week, we're going to talk about that in the conversion phase of what we're doing here with you. And we're not there yet, but if you were to move through the 4 phases that we're talking about, right? And we've already talked about like the signal. You guys remember the first episode, it was the signal, right? Getting those messages. Then we talked about the marketplace. We talked about the education, right? And today we're going to focus on credibility. And then once you move through those 4 phases, and by the time we get to the conversion, which is that final phase, sales is going to be easier, just like when you walk into the Apple store. And remember, the good salespeople are already doing this. And it's many different touch points. They're just not doing it at scale. And not every salesperson in the organization is doing it the same way. So when we get this right and we put these strategies into our marketing, every salesperson in the organization benefits from this, not just the one person that's getting it right. So you start to need less time to, fund your deals. You're talking about, reaching your sales quotas and, all the things that you need to drive revenue and expectations. And ultimately, as leaders of companies, you're growing your company. That's the why. That's the outcome, right? And so having said all that, we're now in part 4 of a 5-part series on the trust and credibility roadmap. This is for multifamily companies. And we talk about who knows you and what they know about you matters more than your deal, your product, the thing you have, whatever it is. Now, I see some people in the off to the side on just video or audio. That's great. If you're just joining us for the first time, you can listen to the overview of what we're talking about here. This is a series on the podcast. The first episode we did on this was sort of an overview of all the 5 phases. And it was, I think it was the trust and credibility roadmap for multifamily companies. If you're just joining us today, that would give you an overview of these 5 phases. And then today we're in phase 4. Now, last week we talked about education, right? Educating that marketplace. And the whole idea there is so multifamily investors and your ideal clients, they're calling you instead of you trying to chase them down. Once we get through today, next week, I'm going to tease you, it will be on the conversion. It will be the final phase of this, phase 5, and it's conversion. But right now, let's just focus on the credibility. Now, in front of me, I have a lot of papers that are going to get flown around here in a minute, but Gary Williams and Robert Miller, they did some research that landed on the cover of the Harvard Business Review, and it's phenomenal. It's patented research, and a lot of people count on this today, even in the investment community. And they say that managers typically use sort of a one-size-fits-all approach when trying to influence the decisions inside their organizations for their bosses or colleagues, however they make decisions. And it really wasn't positioned for like sales or business development, but you can start to think about these are the same conversations. The new research showed that it was a mistake to just use one approach to all demos, one approach to all investors, one approach to everything that you do. I find myself doing that by default all the time. And they went on to talk about how, persuasion is tailored to 5 distinct decision-making styles. And in the research, they talk about these styles, the 5, and I'm going to name them off, so you don't have to wonder what it is. These 5 styles that executives use to make decisions. And I thought it would be helpful for you to know that in this final phase, because when we get this stuff right, you'll see that the outcome in how we communicate and how we message through these phases, the outcome would be the credibility. Now let's go through these categories. They call them charismatics. Okay. The other one is thinkers. They've got skeptics, followers, and controllers. So if you're taking notes, that's charismatics, thinkers, skeptics, followers, and controllers. And they say, charismatics are easily intrigued by new ideas. You can make some assumptions on that. But their experience has taught them to make balanced decisions, not just emotions. And what's really cool, I'm going to go through these and just in summary, give you a couple of things. And maybe when we get to the discussion, I highlighted some things in their research that I thought was really compelling. But there's some buzzwords that if you're talking to someone that's a charismatic, certain things are important to them in language. And these are results, proven, actions, easy, clear, focus. And they summarize like this bottom line for charismatics is they like simple and straightforward arguments. They use visual aids to stress features and benefits. So you start to think about, as I go through these, if what you're doing, are you reaching and landing in the way that people like to process, right? That's what we're trying to do here. The next one is thinkers. And they talk about thinkers are really the toughest to persuade. And they go into the details of the percentage of their research and their findings, like how many are charismatics, how many are thinkers, and so on. But what's important here is just to understand the difference in how people receive information. And so thinkers are toughest to persuade. They need the data. They tend to have a strong aversion to risk and can be slow to make a decision. Know anybody like that? So, and I mentioned it earlier in an episode around a great movie has action, details, and emotion, right? Facts, details, and emotion. That Ford truck pickup, right? So in a TV commercial, TV commercials have to convert in 15 seconds, take you through a lot of things. And they're trying to reach people that need the lease terms. What's the down payment? What's the finance stuff? They're probably pausing the video, taking a screenshot of it. Who knows? And then you have the emotional buyer, right? That's like, wow, the surfboard on the pickup out on the dirt, whatever. And then you have, just the logical ones that maybe are looking at 2-ton pickup, 4,000 pound truckload. I mean, all the facts and details. So very fascinating to think about. As you go through this, start looking at other things, brands that are spending millions of dollars to figure out, to reach people. You can learn and start being aware and tuning into what you see other people doing to reach these thinking processes. So back to thinkers, buzzwords, quality. So imagine when you're writing emails, you're using this type of language if you're talking to, thinkers. Quality for the buzzwords, think, numbers, intelligent, plan, expert, and proof. Those are some buzzwords that respond to thinkers. Here's the bottom line on thinkers. Before you talk to them, get the data ready. Have that data, have the facts, have that market research, have the case study. If you're talking about value add in an apartment deal, do the pro forma, have the IRR, the net present value calculation, whatever it is, but have the data. They like the cost analysis. They want to understand all aspects and all perspectives. And again, those are the toughest to persuade based on this research. All right, let's go to skeptics. Not really sure about these ones. No, I'm just kidding. That was skepticism. So skeptics, these are the people that are highly suspicious of the data. You may see some people that are introducing products in multifamily. There may be a lot of skeptics. Remember, going back to who you're selling to, remember, they have made experiences, they've had decisions, and so you're selling into these things. They resist data that challenges their worldview. They can be sort of that, take charge person. Buzzwords for them: feel, grasp, power, action, suspect, trust, and disrupt. The bottom line for them on the skeptics is you need as much credibility as you can get before you spend time with them. And now followers. Followers make decisions based on how they have made similar decisions in the past or how trusted executives have made them. And they tend to be risk adverse. Now, as I go through all this stuff, you got to be thinking about, like, even if you're writing a post on LinkedIn, like, who are you hitting? Are you, does it have the right words? Are you, using the data, right? Are you talking about others that are using your product, things like that? Because you can start converting better, optimizing effectiveness of everything that you're doing, even when you're speaking, with understanding this research a little better. So the buzzword for followers are innovative, expertise, similar to, and previous. The previous clients I work with have thought about that too, Bob. Here's what they found. I mean, you can start to see how you could use the language to become effective. Bottom line for followers is focus on proven methods, references, testimonials. They want to see that others have succeeded in similar situations. And finally, the controllers. They're going to focus on pure facts and analytics. They have a high degree of uncertainty, I guess, for ambiguity. So their buzzwords are logical, unemotional, sensible, detail-oriented, accurate, analytical. And bottom line with controllers is you need to be structured and credible. They want the details, but only if presented by an expert. Thought that was fascinating. This is why the thought leadership works so well. You want to give them the info that they need so that they can convince themselves. So you're not doing the selling on them, right? You're just giving them the information. Remember, our whole process is, as you go through that research, you can see how you're helping people in that education phase. On the controller aspect, if they're making a decision, you're just giving them the information to formulate a great one. Right? You can see how this can help you with any decision you intend to make or present, either internally for the organization. This is not, by the way, about like personality assessments, because there's a whole nother thing on like all the personality stuff, that there's deeper body of work there. But you start to begin to think about the possibilities of how people see and process information. It allows you to structure the content that you create and prepare online so that the person that's consuming it, it's just easy. They don't want to be dehydrated consuming your content. So if they're fighting for, like, if they're reading your content, looking for the data, looking for the facts, looking for the story, the reference, the proof, and yours doesn't have any of that, then it's hard work to consume your content. So as we go through our 4 stages of our 5-step system for trust and credibility, use these to move your content in a way that it really lands with the people that you want to spend time with. Now, I can tell you, I mess this up all the time. In fact, I can tell you yesterday I messed it up significantly. And I think I was just drawn to this research more because I'm on a journey to figure out how I can communicate at scale, but also as we're scaling up our business, we're bringing on, more and more employees, and they're coming in with different viewpoints and understandings of how information needs to be heard and understood so other people can hear and understand it. And so in order for me to become even more effective, I have to continually remind myself, like, all right, you can be saying something, but is it being heard? And you recalibrate. And this is what brought me to this research today. Now, remember when I said a few months ago that we want to get people to do, we want to get people to do what we want, right? We want them to buy our stuff. We want them to, enroll in our programs, whatever that is. But again, we want them to do it for their reasons, not ours. Now, you heard on controlling that they're going to convince themselves. They're not going to, they don't want to talk to a salesperson, right? Often what we're trying to do is we want to get people to see how we see the world. You should have this thing. You should invest in this property. You should get this passive income. You should be a modern company. And we forget all of these things, and you're probably still effective. That just means you're that good. If you're still moving deals forward, that means that it's not that you need to try and figure out how to follow up differently and all those things, but could you imagine if you could get a 30 or 40% lift on what you say because you're thinking about these things before you write a post or write an article or go on a podcast or go into a meeting or your next demo meeting? You might be talking with someone that sees the world very differently. So we need to give them the information in a way that they process and understand. This goes to every message that we put out into the world. Writing emails, subject lines, articles, all the things that we should be doing to get in front of our audience. We need to think about these categories. And I'll repeat them again real quickly. The categories are the charismatics, the thinkers, the skeptics, the followers, and the controllers. And you begin to see that perhaps when you're doing things, you could create multiple versions of things. Or in one article, you're making sure you're hitting on all these different categories in the one piece. You're getting the different styles in a way that they want to review it. Remember, it's all about them. You may have a team of people that you're presenting to. You've been in these meetings. You got the founder, right? I already know. You can already tell me. You can already put them in a category. If I put it in a chat, you would say, place the founder in the category. I know where you'd put them. The CFO, where would you put them? You got the director of operations. What category would you just, without doing an assessment, you can almost put them in categories based on the questions they ask you before you even get on calls. But you've been in meetings where you have to talk to all different styles. It's challenging, I imagine. And, it's not something you can do, without practice, right? But at least if you have awareness and it slows us down and gets us out of ourself and focused on, the audience or the people that are in those meetings, right? Now that you know these categories, these things that we need to give people, and it's just helping them make the right decisions by giving them the information in the way that they like it. I just want to recall back in that the world in which most decisions have been made to date, and again, if they're in this category and their decision is referencing one that they've already made, that world is gone. It's changed. So this matters more than any time ever to get this stuff right. Because a lot of people are there are people in here, the controllers and the followers and even the skeptics and the thinkers that, they may not thrive in a world moving at exponential rates. The founders are. You can see it. They're getting funded all the time. They're excited about the future. They're mobilizing around it and they're getting funding. But they're probably getting the funding and talking to controllers, giving them credibility, giving them trust, giving them all these things. And so there's a state of uncertainty out there with people because maybe the thing you're working on is different than it's ever been, and there's no frame of reference for them. And so if you do the work to let them feel and understand the information in the way that they need to hear it, then you have a pretty good edge over someone else. And you can do that at scale. Obviously, if you do these things just in meetings, you do nothing else but do these in meetings, you're going to be more effective. But imagine now you're doing this at scale in every post that you make, every article that you write, every content piece that you produce, every white paper, anything that you do, anything your brand company does. So now you've moved through these 4 stages. You're in the credibility stage. Now remember, this is a system. Like systems work. You can trust systems, right? You drove today. Maybe you drove today. There's, in America, you drive on the right side of the road. That's a system. You don't have to think about that every time. You can trust. It minimizes some things, but not everything, right? So we're just in this credibility phase, is the 4th phase in the trust and credibility roadmap that we put together for you. You start to see these things and these meetings getting better because you've heard the messages, right? And when I say messages, I'm talking about when they see something like, yes, that's me. That's for me. This article, this post, that's for me. That I identify with that. If you go to mclients.com and you were to click on live event, you're going to see at the very top, I'm pulling the signal right out. And it says, attention, multifamily investors, multifamily operators, multifamily innovators. And hopefully you're saying, yeah, that's me. And that's the signal phase. And once we have that signal phase, they've heard the messages in a way that they want to hear them. Remember, we talked about I can learn about what I want to do without talking to a salesperson. That's the marketplace. That's that second phase. And you heard today in these categories I talked about that by the time you get in front of somebody, if they're a certain category, you already have the credibility or the facts and the data. So if we're giving it to them with the right signals, that's the first part of our system. Second one is marketplace, and we're reaching them in a way that they can learn on their own, right? And those messages are crafted with goodwill and education around decisions that they need to make. That was our education phase. And now you've moved into, the trusted advisor instead of the salesperson. And that puts you now into the credibility phase, right? It's the outcome. You end up with that as an outcome to doing the other things. And what we did is we just pulled you right out of that warehouse. Do you guys remember the warehouse analogy? If I took all the art in the world, put it in a building, it'd be a warehouse. If I take the piece of art out of the building, shine it on a white wall, put a light on it, it's worth a lot more. It's the framing. And that's what we're doing here. Your messages, your product, your offer is more valuable when we pull it out of that warehouse and we stand out from the rest. And people will even pay more for the art on the wall. You know this. You are the art. It's unique. Your business is unique. Your product is unique. It's different. It should be. That's the job of any business. How are we different from the rest? Coke and Pepsi are still fighting that out. Apple and Android are still fighting it out. I can go on and on, right? So you get that the credibility that you receive by doing all these things, and you're moving people through those phases, the signal, the marketplace, the education. You get the credibility. They give it to you. You don't offer it. You don't talk about it. May not even tell you that you're credible. But if you're moving through those phases and you're positioning your products and service in context to the problems and opportunities that the people you want to spend time with, your clients, want to create, then you're going to have that. Now, next week, we're going to be talking about the last phase, a fifth phase, and that's, in our roadmap, that's the trust and credibility roadmap for multifamily companies. It's the fifth phase, and that's the conversion. Now, this is where the transaction happens, right? That's where the exchange of value happens, the closing of the deal, the buying of the product, whatever that may be. So I don't want you to miss next week, even though if you do, we do have a podcast. You can listen to it on demand. But I want you to sit with that for a little bit, and we'll go to discussion. I have some notes here that go deeper into the categories that we talked about, which I thought were fascinating. I just highlighted some moments here. But just recapping those categories, thinking about, maybe you can share, if you're open to it, how you're seeing it differently, knowing these categories from very top level, the charismatics, the thinkers, the skeptics, the followers, and the controllers. Like, are you seeing that in your meetings? And, how are you moving through that? I'd love to take a sip of water here and open it up to the group if you guys have anything to share.
I'll go. When I was with Conservice for 10 years, every year we would bring in a new personality-based speaker. And I've never done as many personality tests as I did there. So every year we would redo it. We'd find out a different kind of test, a different kind of learner we were, which helped us identify not only our coworkers and how to interact with those people, but also interacting with the clients. And you had talked about how it can be difficult in a room with a bunch of different people. The part of me who loves the psychology of how people think and how they do, actually likes to do that. Like, it's a game, it's a challenge. It keeps you on your toes. It keeps you more informative. But I like to, when I'm in the room and I recognize who the different people are, when I'm addressing a certain part of a presentation, look at that person and make sure they're getting that one, because that one's for them, right? Like that part of it, this extra info. You've got this other, the communicators over here, like they're just the charismatic. They're over here, like they're already tuned out at this point, right? They've already got what they wanted. So go in for this and then pull them back in with something else. But making sure that I'm literally addressing them each individually in the room, not just gearing everything towards everyone.
I love that. That's amazing. And that's in a room. I mean, I imagine doing it on Zoom, it still relates. I mean, you may have a team that you're presenting to, and it's so true. I mean, the charismatics maybe got to their information and checked out, like you said, and you just move into another approach to hit on all these different things. So that's fascinating. It's awesome that your company invested in that too. Yeah,
that was amazing. The Zoom part, that's why I know that most people probably don't, but never make your first big discussion the demo. It's always, I'm trying to figure out the person. But then you're talking about one person who may be setting it up, and you're not talking about the others who are going to be on the phone or on the Zoom. So they're coming in totally blank to you, because you don't know, because you haven't had that chance to feel them out. There's no body language that you're seeing ahead of time or anything like that. So trying to make sure that I do a really good LinkedIn dive on every single person who's going to be in the meeting when I'm provided a invite list, so that I can be familiar, because you can tell a lot about their personalities just by that. and trying to do that to match what the presentation is going to be and what kind of things they've been looking at, because you can see, what they've liked and what they've, clicked on and shared and stuff, and trying to figure out what kind of drives them that way. I've kind of learned to be another fun game that I have for myself.
I love that. I love that about the demo piece. It's make it about them instead of the demo. We get into our rhythms, um, and it's just, I mean, I go through this and I read these things about these different categories, and I just think about all the missed opportunities, and I'm like, wow, okay, I brought some frustration out there, and I realized like it just wasn't the matchup of the conversation. We were saying the same things, and these are important meetings and sales meetings and things like that. So that's awesome. Thanks for
Yeah,
sharing.
I move in and out different slides too. Like I will go through and of, based on the kind of person I have. If I don't have a technically kind of person who's going to really be able to focus on the details,
Yeah.
those all go away. Like they can figure that out later, and making sure there's no slides that are just going to be looked over.
Right. And so, yeah, I know, like, depending on, starting with the story versus starting with the facts, getting to the point quicker, things like that. That's interesting. So adjusting even the presentation in the deck. So you're structured or flexible as a leader in a way like, hey, listen, I have this deck. Some people I see that it's just like they just got to get through the next slide, even if it's been the question's been answered. And I'm one of these categories. You guys probably know which one it is, but I get frustrated. It's like decisions already, like we already know, yes, but they're still going through the slide because they went through a training and the slide said that's the next slide and talk about it.
Yeah, and I'm not there to read to you. You know how to read. I'm there to just explain anything off of that and pick up, one or two highlights. But I'm going to email you the presentation afterwards. You can go, that's where the people who are more detailed can go through it at length on their own, and not in that way you're going to everyone. You're just trying to pick out the best you can.
Yeah, that's great. Anybody else have anything to share? I'll let the thinkers think about it. I do have some things I want to read.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Marcello Cash from Nassau, Bahamas, and I'm the managing director for Cash Consulting Group. And I thought that specifically this topic and those 5 points were so resoundingly just beautiful, because innately, sometimes it's not that people have a problem, or persons have a problem receiving or interpreting the information, but it's just like sometimes you look for that point, whereas like where does the information match with agreement? And you can see, and sometimes, especially with the thinkers, you can look at them and see that they're thinking about it, they're being methodical, and sometimes you can actually tell that they are in agreement or disagreement with their analytics. But just even being able to identify, because then you're perhaps able to reach back into more of your resources and present or represent and structure it in a much smoother and clearer way that is such adaptable to their palette. So I just thought that this was like so beautiful. And it really, honestly, from a client perspective, from a client relationship management to a client perspective, not only is only good for the client, it's really good for you. Because once you can figure out not only what does the client need, but what's their major area concern and how they're going to interpret that concern to the resolution, it saves you a lot more time, and you can come and present those deals on the table with so much more just affirmation. So once again, I thought it was just like remarkable.
Well, thank you for sharing. That was beautiful in your expression there. I love, and I wrote down, and where does this information match with agreement? It's such, I'd love to put those in the show notes. That would be an amazing, like, question to ask, like even when you enter into a new conversation. And I loved how you described it as beautiful, and that you feel like this is good for us. Like we're doing it, we want to move things forward, grow business and things like that, but it's also just useful for us. And for me, it is, even in how you described it, because we get in the hustle, from meeting to meeting and this to that and text to email and the quarterly reports and the conversions and all the things that we got to do to make it all go around. And sometimes we do just rush into things and we don't take into consideration these things. And I think the word that resonated with me was the word beautiful, which is just like, it just makes it, it just gives me a little pause, and it allows for the current state to be present, and know that when you do this, you're really being more effective, but it's really good for you, for us.
Right. And of course, we're in finance. So I would perhaps, even if I could, put this on my KYC forms now, like when you go to figure out to know your client, and you're able to like just really understand, not like I said, just not the needs, but that channel that is needed, because for many people, it's the perception and the way that perception is communicated. Sometimes you can come into blocks, and then sometimes you can come into just great personalities that just understands everything right away.
Yes, and
but ultimately, what you want is the agreement. And the agreement doesn't always have to be in the affirmative, but I believe that you would want agreement, even if it's we choose to disagree, because then you're able to again go back, do what you need to do, and then come back and represent.
Right. It's common ground too, and it gives, so there's not a resistance. Otherwise, they're just fighting to hold their position. And even if there is a disagreement, it's like, well, let's agree that we both have some great points here, and we'll also agree that we've got some stuff to do to go back and get the proof or whatever that is. And so it opens up moving people through opportunities that may have been missed.
Right. And last point I want to segue into, Patrick, is that in relationship management, clients just really love not only when you pay attention to them, but what I feel like is so unique about it is that clients love when you learn their style, when you learn not their methodologies, but just their style. What's their palate? What's their temperature or their temperament? They love when you adjust to their settings. And so when you're able to so I don't really consider it marketing, but when you're just able to say, okay, you're a thinker, so let me adjust to these settings to just make the information more transparent, more easy, so that we can become in agreement. So that agreement just makes the ground so much clearer. Like you said, you gain common grounds, but also it builds this appreciation for both you as the relationship manager or the person who's giving the information, but also the person who's receiving it. It just said like, wow, he's getting to know me. That's beautiful.
I love it. And I also love that you took the opportunity to share with us today, because this isn't about us. This is about ultimately bringing value to others in a way that's useful. And the contribution that I see even after these experiences, from the messages that happen either on social media or in our email boxes or on LinkedIn, wherever that may be, is productive. And it feels good to contribute, right? And so I appreciate you showing up, number one, for this, meaning that you obviously have a great care for the relationships and the businesses that you want to run for your clients, that you care enough to say this is important. And secondly, for sharing and what we think is remarkable. I love the things and the quotes that you mentioned. Clients love when you learn their style. I mean, that's just wise wisdom that you've dropped there. That's simple, and I think it can ground us into creating better experiences for the people we serve, but also better results at the end of the day, because this stuff does matter. So I appreciate you sharing that. I'd love to get some of those comments again in the show notes for that episode. Thank you.
You're most welcome.
All right, let's see. And anybody else have anything they want to share? I would love to open it up to the group as well. I have some notes that I've made as I wait for give them the space to come to the microphone, so to speak, right? We're talking about the charismatics. I made a note here in the body of research from the report, and they talked about they've learned from experience. We're talking about charismatics. They've learned from experience, particularly from the bad decisions they've made. And so what they're saying here is temper your enthusiasm with a good dose of reality. So basically, they may get excited about something, but they've also learned that they've rushed to judgment in one case or another. And so when you, on the other side, can temper your enthusiasm, they like to have balanced decisions, believe it or not. And so it makes them feel a little bit more balanced. I thought that was a really interesting comment. So they said, fight the urge to join in their excitement, which is fascinating to me. And then for thinkers, being intelligent, logical, and academic, readers, deep readers on content. Again, like when we produce information that is designed to educate a marketplace or transfer the knowledge, which is what business development means, transfer the knowledge and then ultimately get to that agreement, like we just talked about, is we produce content that people want to watch, right? Binge watch, read. We talk about people that want to listen. Maybe like here, there's people on here in a live podcast, basically, but maybe they had something else going on, so they'll listen to it on the podcast. And then we take clips of those things. So those are the people that just need the information quick, things like that. And so as you begin to think about how we message people, also think about how you can get it out there in your marketing at scale, so you can start spending time with the people you enjoy helping. Thinkers talked about they have two strong desires in business, and that is to anticipate change and to win. It's good to know. To make a decision, they need as much information as possible, including all the cost benefit, the case studies, all that stuff. They want to go from point A to point B quickly. They want to know the risks up front. They went on to say, like, it's interesting to even start out your conversation with, hey, here's the problem that could be, like if I was sharing that with somebody like that, I guess it would be, here's the challenge with modern marketing today is people don't want to do the work. So the risk is you engage us and your team check, you start dealing with the risks up front, and they start holding more value to the information because they're thinking it themselves. They never forget a bad experience. Moving on to skeptics, they'll tell you what they're thinking because of their strong personalities, which is true. Candor, maybe candid conversations. I liked the idea of adapting to their styles. I thought that was useful. They trust people similar to them. In other words, if you've got an investment due diligence project and someone that's also a developer of a certain asset also made the decision to go down this road, then it's very similar to them. They could find use in having credibility around that. Let's see. Sometimes they need to maintain their reputation and ego. I thought that was interesting. And then moving on to followers, they're afraid of making, it says here, the wrong choice. And again, as we educate people, right, thinking about like how can you get them comfortable that the choice they're making with you is not the wrong one, right? They trust known brands. They're also responsible decision makers. They call followers. They mentioned in the study that they won't admit sometimes that they're followers, but they're probably responsible decision makers, and they're usually found in large corporations. It makes sense. Sometimes they'll agree with something only if they've seen it done somewhere else. The interesting thing about the followers, as it's noted here, is they're also open to education. They help, or I made a note here, help them gain a better grasp of what they don't understand. Right? You're providing value to them. And then controllers, that's the last one we talked about here. Logical, detail-oriented. They're the best salespeople, it says. Marketing experts, snap judgments, and remarks that alienate others. They want the details, but only if presented by an expert. So this goes into, if you are doing the work in those phases I'm talking about, getting the right signal in the marketplace where people want to get information because they can learn the stuff on their own now, and you're using education-based marketing, then you have a higher probability of being seen as the expert or positioning yourself in such a way that CNBC calls someday and says, hey, would you come on and talk about this? Because clearly I can see you know what you're talking about because you've said it, and I can see it written there, and it aligns with the show we're putting together. But the controllers, they want details, but only if presented by an expert. It's very interesting. And again, this is not research I did. I'm referencing pretty good group of pretty good body of knowledge here. And it's not right. It's not the only way. It's not everybody, but it gives us an idea to at least if we can get closer to understanding these things, we can get a wider range of conversations. The only way to sell an idea to controllers, it says, is to not sell it. Instead, let them make the choice to buy. And that's kind of what I was saying is you're giving them the opportunity to get educated in the way that they want to get information. You're allowing them to get the facts, the details, the information that they need. And you're allowing them to make, it's like their decision, not yours. And so pretty fascinating. We're up on an hour into the show. I'm happy to stick around if you guys have any questions or any discussion points or any awesome statements that we just heard today. I'd love to stick around. I'll give you guys a couple of moments. I'm going to take a drink of water. And if not, we'll wrap and we'll see you in the next week's show. I'll do the 5-second rule from what's her name, Carrie? Mel Robbins. If we get the instinct to do something, but if we don't do it in 5 seconds, we kind of pass on it, I heard. But all right, so I'm gonna give a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 countdown, and then we will see you guys in the next show. So great seeing you guys.